Welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Joe and Cody. My name is Joe Skipper. I'm the owner of Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp Realty here in Oregon. I'm with my buddy, as always, Cody Wilhelm with Residential Mortgage. What's going on, my man?
Just living it up. How about you?
Yeah, it's same thing. It's been busy summer so far, but a fun summer. We had a good 4th of July with friends.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just had a good
Still got
time.
all your
So
fingers?
still got the fingers. Yes,
Nice.
I shouldn't be admitting this on camera, but I think we may have gotten some fireworks from Washington.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, they're a little different than the ones in Oregon.
Yeah, they are. It's funny because prior to living here, the only time I would ever come to Vancouver was to get
Has to get
fireworks. Yeah,
that.
I knew
I
nothing
know.
about Vancouver other than if you just drive over the bridge, you're going to find good fireworks.
Yeah, yeah, it was so funny. Like, it's just so odd to me that I'm like, you literally just cross a bridge and can get a completely different set of
Yes,
fireworks and then come right. It's just so weird
right?
to me.
I
Weird
know.
law. But anyways, we had a good time.
Very.
Had fun. It was hot and it's still hot out there, so we're just
Uh-huh.
kind of trying to stay cool.
Yeah. The nice thing about when it is hot like that, you start to find out who has pools.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like everybody's got
Yeah,
pool parties going on
for
and
sure.
and
For
you know
sure.
our oldest, he's like all of his friends seem to have pools, and so it's
Yeah.
just nonstop, which
That's
I'm
great.
not gonna complain about getting in some pools when it's 100 degrees out.
For sure. We've got grandma and grandpa have a pool, and then we changed our hot tub to a mild tub, so the kids can
Oh,
get to
nice.
be in the mild tub right now. But
The whatever temperature the air is tub.
exactly. Well, hey man, what's the new with the market? Anything crazy? Last I saw it was like 7% or something like that, the rates.
Yep. Still pretty much the same. Nothing's really changed much there. I think this morning the average was like 6.94, right around there. So minimal change. Seems to be kind of the same narrative, but looking at some of the Fed notes and things that were talked about earlier, it's a little frustrating just because inflation was the main topic, and that seems to be where it's always been.
Hmm.
And inflation is still above the target 2% range, but it's stabilizing, and it looks like today or tomorrow the CPI information comes out, and if it comes in where it's expected, then it is the lowest that it's been since January, which is great. But now it looks like the narrative is like, well, inflation is not the only problem. That we still have a strong labor market, so I don't know if it's going to take inflation coming down and higher unemployment numbers. But I think I've talked about it on here before too. But another frustrating part is the jobs reports that come out. They continue to get revised like 2, 3, 4 weeks later, and every single time they are revised significantly lower.
Mm.
So the actual number is a lot lower than what the number is that's being reported. And I don't know
Huh.
why it comes out like that, but it seems to be like we're just going to kind of continue to hang out here until something changes. I mean, the ongoing timeline is still kind of September is when the experts that are predicting this type of stuff are still thinking that September could be the month where we see our first rate drop in a couple years. So we'll see, but as of right now, yeah, we're still kind of just hovering right around that 7% range, kind of for a national average. So we'll see if anything changes here in the next couple months.
Yeah, I think you're like most. It's like everyone's just kind of resigned to this kind of sad 7% life like right
Right.
now.
Yeah.
It's
It's just
just,
where we're at. And I
I
guess it
know.
is what it is. And
There's nothing fun to report, nothing,
yeah.
nothing crazy. We may get a small bump though with the election, and then who knows with the
Yeah.
election what will happen and what happens with that. But
Yeah. Yeah. What are you seeing on your end? You seeing much change on the listing side or buyer side for what's
I think
happening out there?
I think anecdotally for us, like things are still trucking along pretty smoothly. We are starting to see prices like homes are sitting on the market a
Hmm.
lot longer, which in my opinion is normal. I don't think,
Yeah.
a house sitting on the market 30, 45 days is not it has his recent history has shown that it's a very uncommon thing, but as
Right.
to a housing market, that is not uncommon. So we're starting to see houses sit on the market longer, starting to see sellers give concessions to buyers for either a rate buy down that you guys do, or
Hmm.
just closing cost concessions, various things like that. So we're starting to see a little more flex, which I think is a healthier
Yeah.
environment for buyers and sellers. I think sellers have been spoiled for a long time, which is good.
Hmm.
I'm not
Yeah.
knocking that, but I think that they're starting to get a realization that we can't get the house that we thought we can't get the house sold for what we thought it was going to be sold
Hmm.
for. So what I'm seeing is a lot of pushback from sellers saying, I think I could get more. I think I could get more. And one of the
Uh-huh.
worst things you can do is overprice your home because, as you know, you just sit on the market longer. So
Hmm.
and then people start thinking, well, what's wrong with it? Well, if I'm going to make an offer, I'm going to go low, and I'm going
Yeah.
to, so you just don't want to get into that. I think so. What we've been seeing and kind of helping clients with is kind of like pricing it properly for the market right now.
Hmm.
And that obviously works out significantly better than thinking like, man, my house was worth this much more a year
Yeah.
ago or this much, whatever. It's frustrating. I'm not saying it's not frustrating to see
Yeah.
that, but we're still the values there in the homes. It's
Hmm.
just not as much value as we were getting, which I think was kind of artificially crazy. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're saying. Just kind of a slower down, like just kind of a steady, like I don't
Yeah.
know the right word for it, but just more steady
Yeah. So it's
with
crashing,
everything.
is what you're telling me.
Yeah, well, I was just going to talk about that. I'm going to do something on social media about this, about a particular article, but it's just insane to me that, you see these articles, and if you just glance at these articles, you would think that the world is coming down. And that's how I get the
Right.
clickbait stuff. You and I do it for our social media to get people to pay attention to us for more than 4 seconds, which is
Right.
almost impossible for anyone to do nowadays.
Yeah.
But these articles, like one of the articles was like, I don't want to quote the exact thing, but it was like something like housing bubble about to burst, experts say, or something like that.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I was like, okay, well, let's see what the experts have to say about this. And so I dove into the article more, and it was particularly only talking about the southern part of the United States, the Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and things like
Oh.
that. And even further, it was basically clarifying that the housing bubble may not burst. It's just that Georgia during, the southern states during the COVID times, and there was a ton of demand. The builders down there met that demand a lot faster than, say,
Mm.
up here in Oregon or Washington or things like that. So
Yeah.
basically, they have more homes there and they have less of a demand. Not to say there's no demand, just less.
Right.
Um, and so, one expert was saying it could crash. And then the other expert was saying, well, yeah, we'll see prices stabilize, but there's no
Hmm.
indication that the market's going to crash based on this.
Yeah.
And it just is, it's a little bit frustrating to see that in such an important topic, such as, buying a home and purchasing a home, because most people, and even us to some extent, glance at a title, we see it, we think
Yeah.
we're experts now in it. We go tell our buddy who tells their buddy who tells their buddy. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, the housing market's going to crash. We're going to sit this one out and
Uh-huh.
kind of, and so it's a little bit frustrating to see that in such important topics, but it's not that this hasn't, this happens all the time in
Yeah.
politics and everything. It's like, these hyped up articles. And so
Hmm.
I think, like, not to pitch you and I, but I think in this market, honestly, whether it's you or me or Joe Schmuck agent, you have to have an expert in this industry
Hmm.
right now to guide you through this, all the mess and all the
Yeah.
the articles and all the downtrodden stuff that's going on right now. And I think, not to get on my soapbox, but I think like in COVID, anyone could sell a house, like anyone. So
Yeah.
you could get your buddy who sells two houses a year. It went fine. Everything went fine because you got a ton of money for it, or you're a buyer and
Yeah.
you had a rate at 3%. So you're like, I can pay whatever you want for it. So I think now is a critical time for people to get in with experts that know the industry, that know what your house is selling for. They know what you can do as a buyer, the
Hmm.
flexibility, the lending options that you have. And so working with the team, I think, is like significantly more important. And those articles are kind of bringing that to light to me to say,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be Cody or I, but if you're out there and you're thinking about being in the market, you have to get with someone that can weed through the crap, because
Hmm.
it's out there and it's scary and it looks scary, but it isn't necessarily, depending on your situation. So,
Yeah. And I think a lot of people want to see the housing bubble happen, right?
yeah,
Like they want to get the discount. So
yeah,
when they see something like that, they're like, they kind of hold on to it. Like, yes, okay, it's going to happen. If we hold
for
out for
sure.
another year, then we should start to see things come back down. And I think there's enough people that are in the market that are looking, that are, maybe they were looking 10 years ago and going, man, what happened to the two and three and $400,000 homes? Maybe that time will come again,
Yeah,
because something has to change. And
yeah,
while I do agree that something has to change, because it's just not, like, certain areas are obviously cheaper to live. Our area here in the Pacific Northwest it's pretty expensive. So
yeah.
it does get harder to just live and have a home, whether you're renting or you're buying. So something does have to change. Otherwise it's just not sustainable for too many people. But I think that it's like it's this hope that something's going to give, which is false hope, in my opinion, because then it's going to push people out longer and longer. And then
Yeah.
you're going to have waited 2 or 3 more years. And then, rates have come down, maybe home prices come down some, but when it's good for everybody, that means that everybody's going to be in it, and it's going to drive it up. And I think a lot of people don't realize too, a lot of the frustration, people got good deals as far as the interest rate goes during COVID, those couple years there, but it was a bidding war, and people were
Yeah.
spending 50 grand, 70 grand more than what the house was listed at, and you had to waive an appraisal, and you had to do all these things
Hmm.
just to get your name in the hat.
Yeah.
And so you're doing everything you possibly can. And then I think that's where the regret comes in is, oh man, maybe we got a little too emotional with this one. And then a couple years later, then you start to see, values are stabilizing, and, we might have to sit in this one longer than we thought. But
For sure.
I just don't see there being this drastic um, crash. I think there's still so much demand that if there ever was, an increase in foreclosures or short sales or whatever it might be, I feel like there's still enough people that are just
Yeah.
going to buy it up, and it's not going to really bring the home values down 100,000, 150,
For
200.
sure.
But again, I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just
you can
kind of.
predict. Yeah, you can predict it all you want, but you're right. Like people have a ton of equity in their house. I don't have the stats offhand, but like there's a ton of people that have equity in their homes so they can ride
Mhm.
out a wave of, in 2008, like the ingredients just aren't there for a 2008 crisis. There's demand.
Yes.
People, the lending restrictions are significantly more. People are have a ton more equity in their home and more value in their home. So even if the
Yeah.
market, did go down, they can wait it out. They can ride it out. So there's just not there's could it happen? Yes, but there's just not the same stuff going on
Hmm.
right now that leads to a 2008. And
Yes.
so I think kind of day trading the housing market has been not successful for a lot of people that are just like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. And it's just,
Hmm.
we just keep seeing something will give, like you were just saying, something will give. Housing prices are going to
Yeah.
have to drop, or the rates are going to have to drop, or a combination of both are going to have to drop
Hmm.
for things to go normal. But to sit there and think you're going to like pick a week that it drops is obviously not paying
Yeah.
off. Like,
Well,
and
and the hard
so,
part too is in my head, I'm thinking, all right, if there were a time where, say, the home values did come down, say $100,000, that probably means that there's a lot more going on with
mhm.
the economy
Yeah,
and everything else. And you might be waiting for this to happen, and by the time that happens, you don't have a job
yeah,
because
we've got bigger issues. Yeah,
yeah, so it's like you're probably not going to get that perfect storm of like, I'm making my peak amount of money and everything is as cheap as it's going to get.
yeah,
But I understand the idea. It's just like buying a car or any other big purchase. Obviously, a home is significantly more cost, but it's
yeah,
like, oh, when do I buy the car? Do I buy it in the wintertime because maybe people are not selling it as much? But you still run the risk of the transmission going out in your first week, and
for sure.
it's like, man, maybe if I would have bought in the summertime, even if I paid a little bit more, I got a nicer car. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I think, like we've talked about, if the time is right, then, you know, then it's right. And it's not going to feel like this is the perfect window, but, get with a lender, get with a real estate agent, understand what the market is doing, understand what your payment's going to be. What do you feel like you realistically can handle? Because that's a lot of the problem too, is things are just expensive. So figuring out how can you budget, like go through and figure out the things, what is worth it to you? Is it worth it to cut out your Starbucks and maybe Disney Plus, or start finding things that you can trim out a couple $100, see what life looks like, and maybe you can apply that to building some equity in a home. And it's not the fun side of it when you have to cut things out, but it's also not fun to be renting.
hey, sorry, Cody, I don't know, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't hear you, so we're just gonna have
Oh,
to go play this. I'm gonna read your lips, but
okay. I
sorry,
will
I
talk
missed your
like
stuff.
this.
But hey, that's probably like it's probably my cue to say people are
Yeah.
like, okay, get off this live stream. So, hey
Right.
man, thank
The
you for
people have
the
spoken.
information. Thank you for everything that you've been doing, and we'll I guess we'll just chat with you next week. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. We'll talk soon, man.